Ben. Go Ben. Okay. Oh yeah, I have to do this. Okay, that fixed that. Hey everybody, just getting everything set up. Karen's not going to join us tonight. She streamed for like 5 or 6 hours poker today. Something like that. And so forth. Good evening to everybody who's watching on Twitch and YouTube. Hey, some check pun. It was an exciting day at the Olympiad, and I'm going to show you a few things that happened once some people get here. We're not on Chess TV, so we're not going to have a big audience. But it'll be entertaining and instructive, and so forth. Hope you guys are following the Olympiad. It's almost over. There's only 2 rounds left. Today was the first day that the Indian men didn't win. They had 4 draws. And the Indian women who had won all their matches, yesterday they lost to Poland, and today they drew the U.S. And they were lucky to draw the U.S. I don't know if they were lucky. Board 2 was always about equal. They got crushed on board 1. Board 4 could have gone all 3 ways. It was very complicated. And eventually, White had a much better position, close to winning. And then in time trouble, she didn't win. The Indian player. And then in an equal position, which we're going to look at, Irena Krush made some blunders and lost. So the match could have gone either way. Alice Lee might have lost to her game, and Krush could have drawn her game, but neither one of those things happened. The other 2 results seem normal. Although I think it's an upset that the U.S. won on board 1 in the India match. So the U.S. teams, if you're interested, are both fighting for medals. Probably bronze. I don't think either one's fighting for gold. But either one could get a bronze medal if they win their last 2 matches, or 1.5 out of 2. Those would be reasonable. I didn't think much of the U.S. men's team because they're so old. But Aronian, who's the oldest player, is doing well. And they're sitting Ray Robson, which is correct. So that's good. Ray Robson really shouldn't be on the team. Should be Hans. He'd be a good board 5 because he likes to play lower rated players. And he's younger than Ray Robson also. Also, India shouldn't have Hari Krishna. India should have Nihal Sarin. I don't know why these teams go with the older player when it's a ridiculous thing to do. They're also fighting for a sandwich. Aminu subscribed. Thank you. Are we taking a look at the first board of American women? We are not. Second in the standings, playing India tomorrow for USA. Not sure what that means, but the USA played India today. Oh, you mean the men? Oh. Yeah, I assume the U.S. is playing India, but not sure. U.S. is certainly an underdog. Yeah, I'm live. So Kramnik was complaining today that the Indian team, the chess base India, is recording the games with phones instead of with cameras. And Kramnik said that phones aren't allowed in the tournament rule by FIDE rule. So, like, that shouldn't be allowed. And Naroditsky read the rule online when he was doing streaming. The rule says, without specific allowance by the arbiter, phones are not allowed in FIDE tournaments. In this instance, the phones were allowed by the arbiter. So Kramnik seems to think phones are never allowed, but they are allowed if the arbiter says they're allowed by certain press and certain officials of the tournament and so forth. When Kramnik was told that, then he changed what he was saying because it seemed like he wasn't going to win that argument. And he said, everybody in the room has phones. Why do so many people have phones? This is all illegal. Again, if somebody has a phone in the tournament room, that's because they have permission from the arbiter, which is allowed. But he kept repeating that the FIDE rules say phones aren't allowed, which is not true. Phones are not allowed unless the arbiter gives permission. The arbiter gave permission for all the phones that are allowed in the room. So, complaints baseless as per usual. Of course, when he accuses people of cheating, he says he didn't accuse them of cheating. And when he complained about the phone being used to record the game, he then said he didn't file an official complaint. So he does stuff and then says he didn't do it and then says that it's wrong and says it breaks the rules. Basically everything he says is wrong, which is in keeping with, what he usually says online. Very similar to Trump. He repeats lies over and over and over again, and then when they're refuted, he repeats them anyway. So, I don't know. I guess the truth is what he says it is. Anyway, he's pretty tall. So, yeah. And so forth. So that was the controversy, although it's not really any controversy. But the games were interesting in the Olympiad. A lot of draws because lots of times good players draw each other. Karen lives in Dallas, Texas now. Is Karen from Dallas, Texas? Very specific question. No. I think Maggie shot JR. Was some confusing TV shows. Okay, so first thing we're going to look at is Arjun versus Vokidov. So I'll do a marker. Okay, so Arjun's been having a good tournament, and he's playing on board 3, and this is the board 1 match between India and Uzbekistan. Uzbekistan is the reigning champion. And I guess I'll show the game. I was just going to show some positions, but they played at Berlin, and in this position, White always plays bishop takes c6 or d takes e5, which d takes e5 leads to a lot of quick draws. But okay, he played bishop a4, which is unusual. And Vokidov played e4, rook e1, bishop e7. They played this relatively quickly. Knight e5, castles, knight c3. Both sides can play differently, but this was their prep. Knight f5, takes, knight takes, pawn takes. And this seems to be better for White. And it seems like Arjun was really in his prep. Like, he was expecting Black to make these moves against bishop a4. And Vokidov was trying to remember his prep. And he played d6, bishop f4. And I was watching the broadcast on chess.com with Naroditsky and Judah Polgar. Naroditsky seemed familiar with this line. He was giving some variations. Black played c6. And they traded. Black can't take with the knight because rook d4 would win right away. And this just seems unpleasant for Black because White is controlling the center files. Black's bishop can't really get out. Occasionally, when the queens are traded, I can play rook e7. So he played queen c7, queen h5, which is the best move. And this is just good for White. So Black should play differently earlier than this. So White just has a nice solid advantage, better pieces, better control of the center. Black is very passive. g4 is good. Rook d4. Bishop c8 is a good move. Good defense by Black. Rook d7 is correct move. This is all correct. The engine likes all these moves. Doesn't like knight e8 so much. Thinks White has increased his advantage. It says White's +1. You can see White's pieces are all good and Black's pieces are all super passive. Okay, h6. Queen g6. The engine doesn't like queen g6. This is Arjun's first mistake. For about 10% of you, the reason black doesn't take the queen is because it's illegal, because the bishop is pinning it. The engine wants white to play queen h4 and says white's up +1. And white's going to follow up queen h4 with g5. And in this position, if white plays sort of obvious g5 first, then bishop f5 is a good move because it attacks the knight. And bishop can go to g6 later. Not now. It pins the knight. This is equal, according to the engine. So he played queen g6. He wants to play g5, but he doesn't want to allow bishop f5. Okay, then c5 was played. Also good as bishop c8. But okay, bishop c5 is fine. Knight c5. The idea is if you take the knight, then I take the bishop. For those of you that forgot, the queen isn't hanging because it's pinned. Okay, so bishop takes g4. And that way, if white takes and black takes, this is the textbook definition of a desperado. If you don't know what a desperado is, this is a desperado. If you take the knight, you lose your bishop. So you desperado your bishop for a pawn. Then when you take the knight, you equalize material. Okay, takes. And the engine says white's slightly better. It thinks that queen g6 gave away most of white's advantage. Queen d4. And engine says this should be a draw, but white has the advantage because white has a nice bishop. And it doesn't like king g2. Now it says it's equal and white has no advantage. And in time trouble, we see a double blunder. And I think if both players had like 45 minutes left, then black wouldn't have blundered and white would have punished the blunder, if so. But because they both had so little time, this position, white has 3 minutes and black has 4 minutes. There was a blunder that black made and white missed the winning continuation. The engine wants to play queen g5 and says that ending is a draw. It says rook d7 is okay too. Played rook c8, h4, and the engine slightly prefers white. Rook c7, b3, and knight e8 loses the game immediately. It's a double question mark move. And he had a minute and a half and it was move 37. And I think if black was able to think 5 or 10 minutes, he would have played a better move. And this just loses tactically, but it's virtually impossible to see. And if you're a computer, then you see it instantly. So both sides missed that after bishop f7, queen f7, white has a couple of winning moves here. And when white moves the queen, there's going to be a pin here. And in that instance, when white moves the queen, black is going to play knight f6. And I'm sure both players saw this position, and they saw if the queen moves away, then black plays knight f6. For those of you who think queen takes is good, black takes with the knight, so that's no good. And queen d6 is no good because the knight takes. And then if the queen moves anywhere, knight f6 looks winning. However, white can move the queen to the d file. It doesn't matter if he goes to d4 or d2. And now black is forced to try to draw this ending, which is not drawn. I had a very similar ending against Sam Shankland at the U.S. Championship around 2007 or 8 in Tulsa, which I won. And the idea is if knight f6, now queen d8 check, and black doesn't have a move here, After knight e8, the queen's hanging, and after queen e8, the rook's hanging. So Arjun most likely would have won the game if he had seen after bishop f7, queen f7, the queen can go to the d file, threatening queen d8. And if black had seen that, black wouldn't have played knight e8. But they both missed it in time trouble. That was Arjun's winning shot that he missed. Again, it's hard to see queen d4, queen d2, and figure all that out. Unless you have time on your clock, then he would do it. And I think if black had time on his clock, he wouldn't have allowed that. Yeah. And so forth. Okay, so he played rook e3, and the rest of the game was not interesting. It was just always equal. Nobody ever had an advantage. And eventually they traded stuff, queens, and just nobody's better here. It's completely equal material. Nobody really has any winning chances. And after c5, they agreed to a draw. Nothing either side can do. So Arjun was better most of the game, possibly much better. Then Arjun was winning for one move, and then the rest of the game was a reasonable draw. That was the best chance for winning in the match. Praggnanandhaa was close to losing strategically against Sindarov, but Sindarov couldn't find a way to break through, so they drew. And the other two games were uninteresting draws. And so forth. Magnus not only wouldn't win with black and white, he would lose. God damn. Okay. So next game is a much longer game. That was between Fabiano Caruana and Richard Rapport, the U.S. versus Hungary. This was board 2 of the Olympiad. The other match was board 1, and this is board 1 of the match. Obviously. And I don't want to show you the whole game because it's too much. So I want to show you the key points. In this position, which is about equal, Rapport made the engine move, which would surprise a lot of people. He castled queenside. Black's moved all of his pawns in front of his king, so usually he wouldn't castle there. But the engine says that's good. Okay, then they maneuvered around a lot, and they got to this position. White is slightly better. Black played knight e8, which is good, d4, and this is the first time in the game where white got a serious advantage. This position, Rapport made a mistake. The engine says he should play knight g7, which defends his pawn and allows black to trade off the white knight if he hops into f5. But Rapport played the greedy move. Queen takes h4. And now white's winning immediately. And that requires white to see incredibly brilliant move. And if black had seen it, he wouldn't have played queen h4. And if Caruana had seen it, he would have won. But Caruana didn't see it, and I don't blame him at all. I got nothing. I don't blame either player. Instead, Fabiano played knight f5, and white is better. Not winning, but better. But anyway, the forced win that Fabiano missed, and Rapport, was taking on c5, attacking the rook quite a bit. Rook takes. Now white's threatening to take on b6 and take on f7. And the engine plays queen e7, and after take says that white's +3. I mean, knight f5's coming, and black's king is ridiculous. Okay, and obviously both players expected queen takes knight, queen takes f7 check, and then king a6. And black is threatening queen e1 check, taking the rook, or queen e1 check, queen h4 check, draw. So if white plays queen takes rook, black can play for a win, or black can immediately draw. And the engine says black should take the draw. And I'm sure Rapport saw that, and I'm sure Fabi saw that, and that's why this wasn't played, and why Rapport allowed it. But as was pointed out by the commentary after they checked their engines, white is winning immediately here. White has the perfect pawn structure. So white to play and win. There's only two ways you can find it. You can use an engine, or you already saw the winning move on the broadcast. If you're actually trying to find the winning move, then, you got two chances. Yeah, Bonarici is correct, plus the other guy that had the correct answer. Menohomo, which is rook e2, stopping queen e1 check and queen e3 check. Now, white's down a piece, but black has no hope. So there's nothing to do here. You can't give up your rook. If you play rook f6, I take, and I'm threatening mate. The engine actually announces mate here. It says white's mating black. I guess you could play knight g7, I suppose. Then queen c7 threatens mate. And if you take... there's several ways to win, but the way that's forced mate is crazy. It's check. You can't play king b6 because of here. And then queen d8. And the idea is we're threatening queen a5 and rook b2. And you can't play king a6 because queen a8 and rook b2. The engine just says it's mate. It says there's no move black can make here. Pre-move this, and the queen and rook will give mate. So it announces mate here. So after rook e2, white would have won. So queen takes h4 was a mistake, and then white had to see rook e2 to take on c5, which I guess nobody's seeing, except engines. So he played knight f5. White is still much better. Now, white can't take anything because there's too much pressure on the d file. So he correctly played rook d3, defending his rook. Now he wants to take everything. Okay, takes, and this is very strong for white. c5, dc5, rook d3. The engine's saying that now white is winning. And he took on b6, which gives away some of his advantage. The best move is queen d1, threatening rook d7 check. And the engine says white is +2. But he took this, now he's +1. And rook d5 is now, the game is equal. Again, queen d1, threatening rook d7 is +1.44. So good winning chances. After rook d5, the game should be a draw. Rook b7 is a mistake. Rapport should play rook b4, more aggressive. And then queen a1 is a mistake. White should play queen e1, threatening the a pawn. And then when black plays rook b4, then queen c3 threatens the e pawn. But he played queen a1, and then the engine doesn't like g3 very much. Knight takes, knight f6 it likes, rook b1 check it likes. And white's up a lot of pawns, but they're all the worst pawns in chess history. So probably the game is a draw. And what the engine wants to do is play queen d3, threatening queen d4 check, and white straightens his pawns out. And then after queen takes, we check, and we take the knight on f6 at some point. It wants to check here first for some reason. And then it says white has some winning chances in this queen and pawn ending. It says it's a draw with best play, but that white's a pawn up. So white has chances to win. Probably a draw. And instead of playing queen d3, Fabi played queen e1, attacking, putting pressure on the a pawn. Knight g4, knight f1, knight f6, always repeat. And it doesn't like king b7. It says knight takes e4 is just a draw. They're in time trouble here with no time control to get to. And this is just a draw because black's king is too active. And king f2 was too far. And here even king g1 is the best move. So this position's quite interesting because white's up 2 pawns, but black's playing for a win. And if black wins, they tie the match. The other games have finished. US was up 2-1. And black is threatening queen e2 mate. And you can't play king f2 to run away because the knight would check and the queen's hanging. Only move to not lose immediately, well, actually queen a3 check is also okay, is queen b2. And in this position, black played an amazing move. He played king c6. And basically said, you're in Zugzwang. So white can't move anything. Queen has to stay on e2 because it's mate. And if queen f2, then queen d1's mate. And if queen d2, then I check. And then I play knight e4 check, winning your queen. If you move your king, knight d1 check wins your king. Knight goes here, queen e2's mate. Knight here's hanging. So yeah, it's hard to move for white. And if white plays knight h2, that takes away the g1 square from the king, so we have checkmate. And if the knight was on f1, which is where it was, then white could play king g1. So white can't move. So king c6 is a brilliant winning try, especially when your opponent has a minute left. Fabi played e4, which is fine, and then king c7, which is funny. In this position, white should play e5, and he's drawing, but he played c5, which is a mistake. Now black's better, briefly. And something funny happened this game. Rapport repeated, because always repeat. And in this position, Fabi said, I claim a draw with king e1. And Fabi was wrong because in this position, which is the beginning of c5, the queen is on d3. So when Rapport was repeating, this isn't the starting position, queen's on d3. So this would be the first time this position happened, and this would be the second time. And since it was going queen here, Fabi forgot that in this position, the queen's on d3, not d4. The queen was on d4, and they did that, then he would have been right. So he incorrectly claimed a draw, so Rapport got 2 extra minutes. Then Rapport played for the win. And in this position, Rapport made a mistake. Black has chances to win if he plays knight takes a4, attacking the queen, stopping queen b6 check. And this pawn is under attack, queen is under attack, and queen takes g2, check is under attack. And after knight takes a4, the engine says black's like half a pawn up. So he would have had good winning chances with Fabi having so little time. But instead he played knight d5, and now Fabi made the best move, the only move that draws easily, and that's queen b5. That defends the knight, it gets rid of most of the knight forks, and it threatens to take this pawn with check. And after queen g2, king c1, the engine just says it's equal. Black's going to run out of checks, and white's going to be able to check a lot and have a passed pawn. And often if black pushes the pawn, we just sack our knight and it's a draw. So now it's a draw. Queen g2, is an equal position, so he could try to win, but he repeated check, check, and he forgot that white can just play king f2. He was thinking we'd repeat again and then try to win. Now you can't try to win because black's down a pawn, and this pawn's hanging with check. So if anybody's going to try to win, it's white. But black has like 50 perps here. But black doesn't have any more winning chances. So knight d5 really threw away his winning chances. Knight takes a4 would have had chances. And then they just repeated. They just agreed to a draw. Now once I go here, there's you can't win my g pawn. Got to defend your a pawn, so forth. If the knight moves, there's queen b6 check. So the U.S. scraped by and won their match. But it's funny, Fabi was winning, and he was better, and he had no losing chances, and then he almost lost. Time trouble makes fools of us all. But it showed that Fabi has the American spirit, because the game was 76 moves long. And so forth. Why is Gotham Chess not playing the Olympiad? I've never been set up so well for a joke. I can't even believe it. The actual answer, without joking, is Gotham Chess plays for the U.S. And in the U.S., he's ranked about, 150, if I had to guess. And only 5 people go. So he's... Now, in certain countries, federations, if Gotham Chess played for them, he would go to the Olympiad if he wanted to. But not the United States. United States, nobody gets to go. Just the best players. He would be one of the top 5 players in maybe like 30 countries, but not in the U.S. And so forth. What are we supposed to do in the middle game? Play better than your opponent. Well, Nakamura's not playing because he didn't want to play. The team captain for the United States for the last 35 years has been John Donaldson, and he's still the team captain. Yay, 1 bit. Thanks, Big Daddy. Yay, McNuggets gave 2 bits. Yay, twice as much. You need to get some chess culture so you understand, who the best players are and who the captains are. Big Daddy gave 3 bits. I think 4 was the correct number. Yeah, Adele wrote a song and sent it to Hikaru, and he decided not to play. Because he asked Adele if he should play, and Adele said, "You'll set fire to your rating. You'll never play chess again." Yay, Big Daddy gave 5 bits, and McNuggets gave 4. If this goes on for an hour, I'll be rich. No, you're a degenerate for other reasons. Did you ever watch the Stephen Fry documentary about him going to the 88 Chess Olympiad? I did not. What if U.S. used on U.S.-born players in Olympiad? Who would go then? What? Oh, you meant only, but you misspelled it. I don't know. That would be a dumb way to pick a team. Big Daddy gave 7 bits. Hooray. McNuggets gave 8 bits. Big Daddy gave more than 8 bits. I guess 9. And then 10 bits. It seems like McNuggets was ready for that. He was just waiting to push enter. Big Daddy gave 11 bits, I think. And then McNuggets 12. It's a bidding war. All right, and so on. Thanks for all the bits, guys. I wish you guys would double each other instead of adding 1. I don't know what makes a good team captain, but I know Donaldson's a good team captain. Who is a better player, Gotham Chess or Mark Esserman? I don't know who's better at chess, but Esserman's better at tennis. Doc Gonzo subscribed. Thank you. I don't think Esserman plays chess anymore in tournaments. Hikaru said Bortnick should definitely be a GM and said it is an insult to compare his chances with Gotham's. What? My son is also Bortnick. I mean, I've said many times on the stream, usually in an insulting way, Gotham Chess isn't a chess player. He's a chess celebrity. So you don't want to insinuate things like Gotham is good at chess and Gotham's going to be a GM and Gotham's going to be on the Olympiad team. Gotham is going to make content for his YouTube channel, and he's going to put silly things that make you want to watch it. That's what he's good at. The Olympiad is for the best players of each federation. That's not Gotham Chess's strong point. It's not a streamer or a creator tournament. It's a tournament for the best players in the world. A lot of people confuse chess celebrities with good chess players. Truth hurts. He may make funny faces, that's true. Some of the top players make funny faces. If the chess team doesn't have enough players, can the team captain sub in? No. I'm not really a chess book person, although I do have chess books behind me. Slovenia is doing well. Nick DeFermian doesn't play chess anymore. He's old like me, except he's older. The way to get better at chess and raise your rating is to donate to the stream. Yeah, Slovenia is a nice place. I enjoyed my time there. I was there about 10 years ago at the World Youth, which was held in Maribor. And we took a day trip to Bled and Ljubljana. But yeah, Maribor was nice. Nice, quiet place. Okay, let's go to the next game. Game 4. Okay, this is the aforementioned. Big Daddy, there is a book called Cry Like a Grandmaster, which you can buy at our merch store, which is exactly the book that you want. So it does exist. It's been on sale for about 5 years. So go to the merch store and buy Cry Like a Grandmaster. Okay, so this is Magnus versus Fedoseev. Magnus is white. Fedoseev prepared to the teeth. This was all his preparation. Not a very common line. Fedoseev said he still prepared this, even though he's used some time. Engine prefers knight h5, but maybe he used a better engine than I'm using. Always play f6, h5. f3 is not the best move. It's playable. And yeah, black is about equal here. Magnus is still a little better. So far, it's a pretty good game. Both sides playing very well. Yeah, the engine says Magnus should play g4, but rook g1's okay. Yeah, the engine still says both players are playing excellent. White's slightly better. Okay, and rook h1 is the best move. Amazing. Yeah, okay. And so far, both players have played excellent chess. The engine says almost every move is correct, and that white is better by playing king f7, rook g2, bishop f6, and then pushing this pawn. And it says it's a draw, but the engine prefers white. Okay. That's what would normally happen when Magnus was having a good day. Magnus played a terrible move, king d5. Now he's worse. Okay. b6. f4 is okay. King d7 is good. And this position, Magnus made the losing move. The correct move is to take on e5, and the engine says black is slightly better. But Magnus played g4, which is insane. And g4 loses. And Fedoseev could have won the game here. What he needs to do is play knight c2, threatening knight e3 checkmate. The most obvious move to stop checkmate is g takes f5. That gives white the e4 square for his king. The second best move, according to the engine, is to give your bishop away for nothing. So, also stops checkmate. And then rook g4, and I'm guessing Fedoseev saw knight c2, gf5, and he just thought, well, the king has e4 later, so I'm not winning. But after rook g4, we're threatening the bishop, and we're also threatening rook f4. Rook f4 doesn't just win a pawn, it threatens rook d4 mate, knight e3 mate, and knight b4 mate. And after takes, you could argue those moves aren't mate because white plays king takes e5, so all of these threats are meaningless. Well, actually, if it was black to move and he played any of those moves, after king takes e5, bishop d6 is mate. So in this position, white must play knight b5 to stop bishop d6 mate in those instances, and then knight check, king takes, rook b4 attacks the knight, and the knight can't move away because bishop d6 is mate. This is the best Magnus can do, and then the engine says Magnus just loses his knight, and black is +3. So probably Fedoseev would have won the game if he had played knight c2 here. The best Magnus can do is lose a piece. Fedoseev took on g4. Now the game is a draw again. F takes e5. F takes e5. Knight e4. And the engine just says all zeros. Knight f3. Knight takes c5 is a big mistake. Very un-Magnus-like. This knight is the greatest knight ever. So I don't know why you would trade it. Just bishop g3 is in equal position, threatening to take the pawn. Engine says all zeros. Now it says white has a terrible position, because black has a passed pawn. These pawns are all hanging, and bishop is dominated by the knight. So now Magnus has to play really well to not lose. And he played rook c1, which is a terrible move. Best move is a4. Try to get your pawns going. King e6 is the strongest move. Rook c4. King f5. And white's just lost. Black's going to do this. And if you don't like that, black's going to do this. And if you don't like that, black's going to do this. So black has 3 winning plans. Take these, take this, or push this. Magnus played the best try, rook a4. Several moves win here. He played knight h2. Magnus again played an awful move, giving himself no chance. He has to take this, and then after knight f3, start pushing his a pawn. The engine says black's winning because black can play rook g2 after knight f3 and the bishop's trapped. So black is still winning. So he didn't want to lose his bishop after knight f3, rook g2, so he took, and this is just an easy win. There's no counterplay for white. So they push their pawns and their kings. Black has more pawns than white. Unfortunate. Magnus kept checking. And he's out of checks now. And here, after king b1, he resigned. I mean, the only human move is to play rook here. And then I play g2, threatening g1, queen check. Yeah, the truth hurts. So in this position, after king b1, Magnus resigned. So nice game by Fedoseev. Fedoseev missed an earlier win. Magnus played well until he played king d5 instead of king f7. And Magnus played very badly after king d5. If he had played king f7, it was still a pretty good game. And anything could have happened. Magnus could have won, Fedoseev could have won, could have been a draw. After king d5, Fedoseev was in the driver's seat, and Magnus did not defend with his usual tenacity. So, not a good day at the office for Magnus. And Slovenia beats Norway 3-1. Slovenia's average rating is quite low compared to the other teams it's been competing with the last few rounds. And they're up in the top 5 now, and they're easily the lowest rated team that's doing so well. And so forth. How did people analyze before engines? Their analysis was wrong. Dirty bits. Is it possible Kramnik is right and Gukesh gets illegal help from chess-base and classical chess? Also explains why he's bad in blitz, where it's difficult to cheat. Well, thanks for the 30 bits. Kramnik didn't accuse anybody of cheating. Kramnik said phones aren't allowed in the tournament room as per FIDE rule, and that there were phones. And so they shouldn't let phones in the tournament room because it's against the FIDE rule. And he's wrong about that. The FIDE rule says phones are not allowed in the tournament room unless the chief arbiter gives permission. And in the instances of those phones being recording the games, the arbiter gave Chess-Base India permission. So, is it possible that Gukesh has been cheating for years and that's why he's so good? No. Do you think Kramnik was just trying to distract the Indian players today? No, I don't think Indian players knew that Kramnik was talking about the phones. Any tips to memorize and get a better grip of the board? Play better. Is it possible Kramnik, misspelled his name there, shouts about cheating so much because he cheated against Topalov? He did not cheat against Topalov. So no. Kramnik is the Uzbekistan team captain. Yay, Bortnik raid. His son is also Bortnik. There's no raid. Man, the truth hurts. I didn't know which Bortnik was going to raid me. Yay, Bortnik chess rated with a party of 93. Go, Bortnik. Thank you for the raid. We're on YouTube right now. What became of Spraggett? I assume you mean Kevin Spraggett and not Grant Spraggett. Oh, snap. Kevin Spraggett has a serious case of hold. He retired from chess long ago. Ross Spraggett, another name from the past. Lions to the Super Bowl? I think the Lions will go 9-8. It's my prediction. Yeah, playing a lot of chess, analyzing your games gets you better. U.S. playing India tomorrow. Predictions? Prediction? Pain. I predict that India will win. Did you know Calvin Blocker streamed on here a couple of days ago? I did not know that. I'm glad to hear he's alive. Ross Sprague, Kevin Spraggett, Calvin Blocker. What am I, 80? God damn. Slovenia, Netherlands? I don't know, I guess Slovenia. The Tigers have a better record than the Lions. Are the Lions 1-1 or are they 2-1? Confused. They were 1-1, but have they played 3 games already? Now I'm confused. Yeah, 1-1. Any GM Tony Miles stories? Many. The Tigers had a pitcher named Boyd, which is Karen's last name. Carl Bohr. I knew Carl Bohr when we were talking about his dad. And Carl Bohr that you're talking about now was a little kid. Frankly. people on the stream talking about people only I know. Nobody else on the stream has heard of them. I played Bughouse with Grant Spraggett. Am I done with the analysis? Never. Okay, this stream's all about the Benjamins, so I'm going to show you a Benjamin Bach game that was all theory. The whole game. That's a good question. I don't know what happened to Boris Men. Okay, so Benjamin Bach and Benjamin Gladura are both having good Olympiads, both gaining rating points. Benjamin Bach plays board 4 for the Netherlands. He's the only bright spot on the team so far. And him and his opponent blitzed out the first 1,000 moves of this game. It was a Najdorf. Both sides playing super instantly every move. Still theory. Engine says equal. White's obviously playing for a draw. White's a much lower rated player. So he's playing a theoretical line that leads to a forced draw. And the players just blitz this out. Both players have more time than they started with. Okay. And this position, the engine says it should be a draw. White has 3 connected past pawns, but if black, the pawns aren't dangerous now, and if black gets the rooks and bishop coordinated, white's king is toast. Yay, random user gifted a sub. Hooray. Thanks for the gifted sub. You're the best. Okay, white played b4. White still has more time than he started with. This is still his prep. Rook e8. And so this is 23 moves of prep, 22 moves of prep. And the game didn't last much longer. The engine says c4 with the idea of c5, or a4 is equal. And white made a very poor move here, b5. And you can see by the time, he has an hour and 34 minutes, more time than he started with. And he thought like 13 minutes on b5, and b5 is a terrible move. That allows my bishop to get active, and it separates the pawns. And I've made this analogy many times to my students, and I've made the analogy many times on stream, and I don't think anybody understands the analogy. So it could be that I have a mental illness, or I'm smarter than everybody. Mental illness is in the running for first place. So when I see a pawn structure like this, I call it the accordion pawn structure, which is not the mental illness part. Mental illness part analogy that I make is this is like Monopoly. Monopoly, when you're building, you're not allowed to have, let's say you have 3 properties and you're putting houses on them. You're not allowed to have a disproportionate amount of houses on one and fewer on the other. So you can have 2 houses 1 and 1, or 3 houses 2 and 2, etc. You can't have 3 houses on 1 and 0 and 0. You're not allowed to do that. And that's what this reminds me of, that this is 0 houses and this is 3. And that's not allowed, and I don't allow it in chess for my students. Those pawns don't have any cohesion, and it's bad for white. So b5 is positionally very bad because the 3 pawns aren't related anymore, and my bishop has all the dark squares. After b5, black is obviously better. And that's like the only bad move white made in the game so far, and he's already in trouble. Yeah, you should push your pawns together. Hotels is too complicated. The English prose that you're discussing, Chris, is only applicable when you're writing. When you're speaking, you can say anything you want and it's fine. Anything that you learned in school about how to write, that's for writing. I can say him and they all I want. It doesn't matter. But if I write it on a paper and you're the English teacher, then we have to question how you're the English teacher. That's another story. Now, black played the only move to give him an advantage, rook a7. That blocks the queen, and already black is threatening to win the game with rook d7 check, king c1, bishop a3 check, king b1. Then you can win by checkmating your opponent, or you can take their queen. Okay, now white's play is forced, and he correctly played c4. That's the best move. And then king c2. Rook d2 check is not the best move. And white played king b1, which is a blunder. Obviously, somebody who watches my streams always play king b1. Obviously, after king takes d2, bishop b4 check wins the queen. So white should play king b3, and the engine says it should be a draw. But he played king b1. Now his king is crushed on the back rank, so black plays bishop d6 attacking the queen, and if the queen moves away, then rook e1 is mate. So king b1 was a terrible blunder, checkmating his own king. Queen f6 is forced, king c7, and we don't really have enough checks to cause any issue. He played king c1, which stops rook e1 mate. Now he's threatening rook e1 mate. Then he stops it again. And it's forced mate. The engine already announces mate. All these moves are the right moves, including f3. Every move black made was the engine move. Now we're threatening rook e2 check and rook d1 mate. But white doesn't have a lot of checks. And a4 check is the last check. And then that's it. And here white resigned. So white played to a position that's known to be drawn and equal to here. And then he played b5, which is a mistake. And then he played king b1, which is double question mark. And lost the game without a fight. White's rating is only 2364, and his opponent's rating is 2600. So sometimes you lose when you're paired up 250 points. Are you dumb? Probably. Does rook a7 blunder a rook? No. If you play queen b6 check, then I play rook c7. Now I'm going to play bishop c5 later with tempo. Queen b6 isn't a terrible move, but c4 is better. What he did was good. It's just in this position he needed to play king b3. So he went from equal to worse in one move, then he went from slightly worse to completely lost in another move. Then he just lost. Then there's nothing he could do. The two rooks totally crushed the white king on the back rank. Truth hurts. It's just you. Okay. Marker. Okay, this is the last game of the stream. I'm not going to show the whole game because I'm bored out of my mind with the game, but I'll show you the end of it. Okay. So this is the game. Irena Krush. She's board 3 for the U.S., and she's playing the Indian board 3, Agrawal Vantika. And the engine says all zeros. Materials equal. Black has more space on the king side. Irena has this fantastic bishop, and the C pawn is isolated and weak. A pawn is isolated. Both sides have advantages, and the engine says it's about equal. Unfortunately, black can seize the initiative, and white has to defend correctly, and both sides have a minute left. So, practically speaking, I would say the advantage is with black. If two engines are playing, the game will end in a draw. If two super GMs are playing, probably a draw. But with the time situation, it's better to have black here, because black is the one that can seize the initiative. Okay. I placed an order with merch. The more orders you place, the more money we have. Yeah, Cry Like a Grandmaster is very funny. If you guys want to laugh a lot, and there's some jokes you won't get, so you can ask people to explain them, you should order Cry Like a Grandmaster from the merch store. It's very funny. Okay, so black played f4, and this position, white only has one move that draws, and otherwise black is winning. And Irena, with a minute on her clock, didn't find it. Let's see how many of you can find the only drawing move for white. So like when the engine says it's equal, like black doesn't have to play perfectly to draw, but white does. So black's actually better. White can easily lose, but it's very difficult to get an equal position. Okay, the correct answer is King H1, which was not played. And the engine says best play is Rook F8, Rook G1, FE3, FE3, Rook F5, and it's equal for some reason. I'd still rather have black, but okay. Irena's move loses. She, instead of playing King H1, she took on F4, which is the second best move. And now black has one move that wins, otherwise black's losing. And it's pretty obvious what the move is. It's E3, threatening E2. And this position, Irena made a further mistake. The best move is Rook takes knight, and black is up 2.7. That's still losing. But she played F5, which is the second best move. And in this position, black only has one winning move. Otherwise, it's equal. What's the only winning move for black? And with a minute on her clock, she found it. And when Irena played F5, she only had 3 seconds on her clock. And then she gets 30 seconds added after making the move. What's the only winning move for black? Well, random user, if I had rephrased the question to what's the only winning move, knight f4 does win, but not for black. But I did say black is winning, so knight f4 is not correct. I like the answer from Toast. Queen takes g5, even though there's nothing on g5. That's why I like it. Good answer. I don't know if he meant queen g5 or queen takes f5. I don't know. Yeah, queen takes g5. That's, yeah. I agree. Yeah, my chess spot's pretty good. I played it twice and we drew. Okay, so the only answer is queen g5, which was played. Okay, and now it doesn't matter what white does. White's lost. She played rook takes d5. Taking the rook wins, but e takes f2 is better. So for example, if you play king h1, for example, I take the queen and then play rook e1 check. So you can't play king h1. If you play king h2, then I take this, I'm threatening rook e1, and I'm up the exchange, and this pawn's hanging, and this pawn's good. So resigns. Okay. You can't take with the rook because your queen's hanging, so Irena took the pawn with king takes f2, and now black has forced mate. She played queen g3. King g1's the only legal move. And then rook e2. So black never did capture the rook on d5. Black was busy checkmating white. Now, to avoid mate, white has to play queen h6 check, which only temporarily avoids mate. So here, white resigned. And that equalized the match for India. That was the last game, the finish, I think. India was down 2-1. So in this position, if white had played perfectly for the remainder of the game, and black did also, the game would have been a draw. But black is fighting for the win. And e takes f4 was the losing move, and she was losing after that. And king h1 would have given white good chances to draw, but she didn't find it. And she's in time trouble. That's a hard move to find anyway. So, but yeah, it turns out that this e3, black is crashing through, and white doesn't have enough defense of the king. So good game by Vantika, and the U.S. women drew the Indian women, which is a good result for the U.S. Indian women are better. See how the Braves are doing. Braves are down 4-3 in the 7th against the Marlins. The Marlins. Come on, we're trying to make the playoffs here, Braves. Don't lose to the Marlins. Or I'm going to raid somebody. And I'll stream tomorrow, 6:30 p.m. Eastern. Sub Saturday, I play subs. And Karen's not streaming tomorrow, but she'll stream all day Sunday. All right. Thanks, everybody, for watching the recaps and so forth, mainly and so forth. And I'll see all of you